don't just avoid squatting. Don't just be like, oh, I'm not ready. It's like people going, oh, I'm not going to come to jiu-jitsu. I'll go get fit first. They never get fit and they never come to jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. You got to squat. You have to squat. Squatting is possibly one of the best things that you can do to help you be a better, stronger human. But there's a lot of variations. There's a lot of different things with technique. And for some of us, squatting's hard because maybe you're stiff, maybe you're a bit immobile. So it's hard to just jump in, chuck a bar on your back and go. So what we're going to do today, my friends, is we're going to break down the different types of squat, how you can get it, how you can get better, and how that can help your BJJ. Talk to me, Joe.
What is it about the squat that makes it so popular, effective?
Look, everyone's got their own favorite version of a squat, but I guess the most fundamental thing about a squat is what it does for our hips, knees, and ankles. And depending on how you load it, whether you put a bar on your back or you're holding kettlebells, you're holding a sandbag, however you want to load it, it can do amazing things to build the musculature of your back or your core. You know, like it's such a whole body movement.
Yeah.
And really, the great thing is if you're doing it full range of motion, it can also serve to improve your flexibility.
Yeah.
So, plenty of people only squatting to 90, and we can talk about that. But there's not many strength movements that also improve your flexibility. Like certain movements are done to exert maximum force, but they're not there to build range. Whereas if you're squatting regularly and you're gradually building up that load through a full range of motion, man, you're actually improving the range of motion through your major joints.
Yeah,
which is pretty awesome.
I would think that if you had to only ever do one, like we've said that Turkish get up is the exercise, right?
Sure.
But if we were like even simplifying that further and being like, all right, Turkish get up is actually like 5 exercises.
Sure.
Your feet have to stay on the spot or your hands have to stay on the spot.
Purely one move.
Squat would be the one, right?
It's
at least for me.
Well, yeah, I think depending on how you load it, the squat is a fantastic move. And look, I would have for a long time said deadlift, but that's very much in the context of jiu-jitsu because it requires grip. But if I was just training my mum, like someone who doesn't care about grappling, I would just try and improve her squat because that's going to be better for her balance. That's going to be better for so many things.
Yeah.
And so let's unpack why the f***ing squat.
Can we first separate, there is like a resting squat position, which is not really what we're talking about today. That's just like where you would squat down and rest and you would be using it just as a chilling out position.
Yeah.
Now this is something that's important and you should try to cultivate one and you should try and do it a lot. But
most people cannot get there.
No, that's right. It's funny, right? You travel in Southeast Asia. And
people call it the Asian squat.
And you're like, damn, everyone's got good squat. Now, I used to have a squat like that until I had my knee surgery.
Oh,
but it's one of those things where you see a lot of Westerns and like, they look at it like,
oh, that's weird.
It's weird. Like, what are you doing there? Kind of thing. You're like
having a smoke.
Yeah, having a
cooking,
smoke, looking at my phone,
whatever, chilling,
selling these bananas.
just doing life.
But we actually know that there's so many health benefits tied up with not just the physical ones, but also internal ones tied up with spending time in that position. But anyways, the strength-biased squat, where we're using it as a strength exercise, this is kind of a slightly different thing. What was your question?
I was like, let's unpack it because if we think about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whether you're trying to pass guard or you're trying to maintain your guard, like you're trying to keep your knees to your chest, whatever you're doing, full range of motion is really important. Yeah. Like your ability to have your knee fully flexed, your hip fully flexed, abs contracted, whatever. Like however you do it, being able to be there and be strong there, not only just go there, is quite important. And not many movements will do that for you other than a full range of motion, A to G, ass to grass, squat. So that's a very controlled, easy way to do it. Now, obviously, if you're playing guard, you've got to recruit the muscles in a different way. But if you cannot do that, then we've got to say, hey, we've got to sort that problem out. So typically the problem I see with most people when they struggle to squat, it's tight ankles or bad ankles. So they haven't got the ankle range of motion, which means their knees don't move forward enough. And then for a lot of people, it's tightness in the hip flexors and the hips.
Yeah.
They can't get the hips lower than 90 degrees. Now, most people would just be like, oh, that's fine. Just squat to 90. That's cool. Just do powerlifting. Yeah, maybe, but because jiu-jitsu requires you to have more range of motion, it's good for you to train it. So I always try to make sure that I am building up a person's range of motion before I load them up too much.
Yeah, I'm generally the same. I think that the only thing I've come to realize a bit more recently is that. So no, I have experienced this with a couple of people I've trained. Sometimes if I take that approach strictly, as in we're not loading it up until you got good range of motion, we almost never get to the point of good range of motion.
Sure.
So I do find there's a point where it's like, all right, we're working on that. The range of motion is improving. Now let's also start loading it.
Yeah, and it can help. It can help. I think Andrew Locke had shown a video of someone doing a squat bodyweight struggling and then someone being able to use resistance to brace against, and that allowed them to get deeper.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly valid. In the same way, I don't think you have to have perfect ankle range of motion before you start to load your squat. But I think what I see is, for example, people squatting in lifting shoes or people squatting with their heels elevated, and that never changes.
Yeah, it's just always.
That's forever, you know.
Are you working on that? No, I don't know.
Well, I don't need to because I've got lifting shoes. And I'm not against people wearing, weightlifting shoes, but essentially to chock your heel is to basically compensate for the fact your ankles are too tight. If you're not improving your ankle range of motion, then you're kind of limited in that way. And then also with the hips, a lot of people struggle with like adductor tightness and hip flexor tightness, that when their hips try to go below their knees, their lower back rounds and their posture collapses and all of that kind of shit. So actually spending some time working on range of motion through your hip flexors, your adductors, is very helpful. So I think this is something that people just don't do, and that's why their squat sucks, and that's why people avoid it.
Yeah. The other thing I think is worth mentioning, like there's those practical elements, like those kind of functional elements of the squat, right? Like the pulling the knees up towards the chest and the flexion of the knee and the flexion of the ankle, that are important in jiu-jitsu. But then there's also like knee strength.
Yeah.
Like having good, strong muscles around your knee, having good, strong quads and hammies, having strong, thick tendons and ligaments.
Yeah.
Like squats build that. But also having the power and explosiveness to be able to move fast, right? Like if we're looking at what it takes to be athletic, right? Whether you're, you're trying to pass guard aggressively, or you're trying to pick someone up, or you're trying to shoot a double, this comes from building strong, powerful hips, and the squat does that.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I think the other thing too here is that there's many bodyweight versions of a squat that are just not done because they seem it seems too hard. So I wanted to here just talk about pistol squat, which we love, and also the shrimp squat or skier squat, some people call. And so this is a single leg version, but this is where you can, it's actually pretty easy to just build it up over time. So if you've never done a pistol squat before, you can just start by sitting on a chair, sit on the edge, take one foot off and stand up. Most people struggle with this from a dead start. But then you're like, all right, now slowly sit back down and don't collapse. And what this does for your ability to learn control through your hip, your core, your knees is really great. And it's very easy to just gradually set, whether it's a chair or a bench or a stack of plates, gradually get that lower and lower for you to build up your range of motion. And you haven't added any weight and you start getting stronger through a squat range of motion. Even though purists will say, oh, that's not a squat. If you get good at pistols, it will make your barbell, kettlebell, other versions of squat better.
On the show, we talk about how you can get healthy for jiu-jitsu and practices that you want to have as part of your day-to-day so that you can be in the best possible shape to train. And this is whether you're an athlete or just the everyday jiu-jitsu hobbyist. One of those habits is using electrolytes. We've spoken about this on other episodes, and electrolytes, although incredibly simple, are one of the missing links for people when it comes to performance. And the beauty of electrolytes is that they allow us to be hydrated. So we're talking about salt, potassium, and magnesium. Now, today's show is actually brought to you by Sodi, and this is a crew that we've been partnered with now. We are using Sodi on a daily basis, and the beauty of what these guys do, this little Australian company, is that they put in a beautiful mix of salt, potassium, and magnesium, and delicious flavors. You punch it in some water, I throw it into a protein shaker, I put one or two of these bad boys in there, and I drink it before, during, and after training. I just sip on that thing, and I tell you what, my hydration levels feel better than ever before, and it's delicious. Sometimes I use it first thing in the morning. I even pumped one last night because I felt a little bit parched after dinner. So go check out Sodii, SODII.com.au, and use the code bulletproof15, and you will get 15% off your order. Get hydrated, get Sodii. Can we dive into the back squat?
Okay, sure.
Because I think
Let's go there.
Yeah, if we're talking squats and we're talking about the purists, and it's
Sure.
the strength world is really often about the heaviest weight you can lift.
Sure.
And it's in many ways, like the heaviest weight you can lift is a great expression of your strength.
It can be.
Right? So if we're talking about the back squat, which is one of the big three.
Yes.
Right? And if you were to ask any big jacked person, jacked legs as well, not just upper body, they would say back squat, got a back squat.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what is it about the back squat that, what's good about it?
So there's two things. Let's first describe why a back squat is so hard. You start with the eccentric portion of the motion. With a deadlift, you're starting with the concentric part of the motion. And also you can just drop the weight, right? You'll see a lot of people stand up with the weight and be like, yeah, and then just bail on it.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. Concentrically, through the lengthening phase, it's a safety mechanism that you are...
Like concentric shortening.
The eccentric phase.
Yep.
It's the lengthening, shall we say, it's stronger. It's a safety mechanism. By how much, we don't know. Say anywhere from 20 to 30% stronger. So you could put the weight on your back and you could squat down safely, but can you come back up?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
And that's...
Scientifically, you can go down with more than you can come up with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a roll the dice. So you'll see a video of someone squatting and it's like, can they get low enough? Okay, cool. Let's see this mother. Let him cook. It's so hard to come out the hole. So there's that. It is a harder movement.
So because of that, it does mean that it's you can get yourself into trouble.
Yeah, you can. And there's a lot of fails. You would have seen all the videos of people rolling it over their neck, breaking their neck. A fairly famous powerlifter died breaking his neck only, I think 2 months ago. Can't remember the gentleman's name. Yeah, he got spotted poorly and the bar fell forward and killed him. And then lots of horror stories there. Whereas with a deadlift, you can't pick it up. Just let it go.
Yeah.
Even though people have hurt their backs trying to lift too much weight, the thing with the squat, which is very impressive, which I didn't appreciate for a long time, is if you get a stronger squat, it will improve your deadlift.
Right.
Because you've got greater leg drive. But doing more deadlifts doesn't improve your squat. That's why because the deadlift, even though there's different arguments about it, squatting improves leg drive, which will enhance your deadlift.
Right.
But it doesn't actually go the other way per se.
Okay.
So in that way, the squat is not superior, but superior because it also the back squat puts a lot of stress in your spine. Now, I read a study, it's probably 15 years ago, so this may have been debunked, but hear me, that the level of stress it
but
puts...
I'm going to say it anyway.
Well, no, I found it very interesting, but then also I recently heard someone say that's not true, and I was like, okay, well, whatever. Hit me with the facts. That squatting improved blood serum testosterone in men. Because of the stress it put through your spine, you actually had a hormone response to it, which was like your body elevated the testosterone.
Right.
It was so much stress through your nervous system. It was like, yo, body, you're on break. Hey, testes, we need some testosterone in this bitch. Okay, get strong. And I think that the other element here is that your ability to brace is so essential. Putting load on your back and bracing all the muscles of your core and keeping your back straight through that is a really important part of being a strong human.
Yep.
And it's one of those things that you don't have a choice. Like if you don't brace, it's going to buckle you.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how squatting can really teach that to you.
Yeah. And there's not so if you think about a back squat, like the listener I'm talking to here, the weight's sitting on top of your spine, like across your shoulders. It's so your whole body minus your head, your whole body is under the load of that. And so if you're just doing back squats, you will strength, you will build muscle everywhere.
Yeah.
Like you will become thicker through the trunk.
Yeah.
Like all of it, even though the trunk's not moving, it's working to hold that position under load.
And your back has to brace a lot. Now, there is two major versions of this, which is a high bar back squat, which is what Olympic lifters do, or people who like to squat full range do. And then there's a low bar back squat. So a low bar back squat is typically done in powerlifting, which is the bar sits lower across your back and is more of a hinge.
Yeah.
Your knees don't travel over your toes as much.
Sheep.
Well, it's
kidding.
it's maximum load through a reduced range of motion. So people who do low bar will lift more weight, but they basically moved it through a smaller amount of space.
Yeah.
So if we could take the high bar, actually I can't remember who it was. I think it was Charles Poliquin was saying like, oh, if we added up all your half reps, that would be 5 reps, because this guy was squatting 10 reps to 90 degrees. And he was saying, if you want to build bigger quads, if you want to be a stronger human, squat ass to grass. Why are you missing this whole, in the same way, what is it? Why would you ignore 50% of the human body? Why would you ignore 50% of the squat range?
Yeah.
Because that is where a lot of the great development comes from, through the glutes, and the lower back is coming out of the hole, which is the bottom of the squat.
It's a good time to bring up one particular jiu-jitsu strength influencer that I encountered.
I've seen this guy.
On the marvelous platform called Instagram, who
is not strong.
Who isn't strong, and who very confidently tells people that you should not squat to the bottom of your range. You should only squat halfway, or like 90 degrees, or like thighs parallel.
Yeah.
And his reasoning for that is that you will place extra stress on your knees, which, coupled with the stress of jiu-jitsu, will fuck your knees up. There is a logic there. It's just incredibly flawed. Here's the deal. Strength training is, at its essence, trauma to the body.
Stress.
And that stress, that trauma, you then recover from it, and this is how you become stronger. Now, of course, if we take it too far, too extreme, we fuck ourselves up. But if we don't do it, we don't get any of the benefit.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, if you want strong, healthy knees, express your knees all the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Get think of the tissues, like your meniscus sliding around and shit. Pressurize that bitch, as far as it goes, naturally,
in a healthy way.
Yeah, with control. This is how you and make yourself strong and less prone to injury.
Exactly, because it is going to happen to you in jiu-jitsu. Like, how many times have you been playing guard or passing guard and someone
push my
just
foot into
jams?
my ass?
Yeah,
shit.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get Joey's heel up. He's that. He's like, oh, that's uncomfortable. Okay, pass guard. See you later. But that's the thing. We are trying to prepare our bodies for the stress of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And really, there's two arguments with the squat, and I'm not going to belabor this. We're going to move on. Powerlifters will say, well, the powerlifters are the strongest people in the world. But then the Olympic lifters will go, well, yeah, power to weight ratio, who's stronger? Because, when you got like Liu Xiaojun weighing, he's a famous Chinese lifter, he's kind of retired now.
85 or some shit.
75, 77 kilos, and he's hoisting 230 kilos above his head. The power to weight ratio is awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can't deny that. And that guy squats all the way down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. You ideally, what we would want for you guys is that you would be flexible and strong and have an optimum pairing of both, not too much of one and too little of the other. So that, I would say, there is consensus between us, Joey, that we are about the A to G squat.
There we are. Yeah, absolutely.
But there's a lot of ways you can do it. You don't just have to put a barbell on your back, right?
No. One other thing to mention, just on the whole barbell piece.
Yeah.
The barbell allows you to add weight very easily.
Yeah.
And that's the convenience of it. That's where, if you're doing our programs and you're like, hey, I've never strength trained, we're going to tell you to do Strength 101.
Sure.
Because you're going to encounter some simple barbell squats that are just going to build strength.
Yes.
Then we can start to talk about, all right, let's look at some more tricky shit.
Yeah, right? Get fancy, get messy with it. Yeah. But I'm going to actually say that my favorite squat is, I'm excited.
Why's that?
We have an apparel sponsor, Parry Athletic.
Bro, George came through, messaged us on the Instagram, said he's been following our program for ages. He's getting stronger and more mobile. And he's got this cool gear company called Parry, and he wants to send us some stuff.
And he told me that his mission was to create the best pair of training shorts ever.
Yeah, he wanted something that he could lift and roll in, and that could accommodate thick, muscular thighs and hips.
And that suits us.
Speaks to us.
Also, what I like is I love the colorful design. It actually looks really cool.
I am the most colorful dude on the mats these days, hands down.
I think the thing that I've loved about it is just it feels good. It feels good. It looks good. And you, ladies and gentlemen, can get a discount when you go to checkout. If you go to pariathletics.com, put in the code bulletproof20 and you get 20% off. Oh yeah, that's like a sandbag, like a bear hug squat. Because, let me elaborate, the compressive force you have to take through the front loads up your back and your anterior chain in a crazy way. It's not that barbell
abs and shit.
Abs and back. But I mean, if you think about like a suplex or trying to control somebody, a body lock, anything like this. Front headlock. You're doing this squeezing motion and it requires you to use your abs as well as your lats and your back. Like you're using everything.
Yeah.
But what I also like about it is I have got people to do it who didn't have a very good squat. And by loading them through the front, it enabled them to kind of counterbalance and sit deeper.
Yeah.
Which is like really cool. I was like, wow, we didn't have to spend in 6 months trying to fix their hips and knees and whatever. Just by changing the way we loaded them, now the squat looks really good.
And you also didn't have to teach them how to brace.
No.
Right? Like
there's no choice.
This is the whole thing with back squatting. It's like, it's quite high skill.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing it at a high load. You really have to know how to brace. And I find often teaching that to someone who's like, hey man, I'm just here at the gym because I want to get stronger for jiu-jitsu. I'm not trying to get good at exercise.
No.
It's like, we can around with the barbell and I'm going to try and teach you this intricate technique, or pick up that bag, hold it like a gable grip and squat as deep as you can, and it's done.
It's magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. The sandbag squat is like super high percentage.
Yeah. And it just, in my opinion, translates to jiu-jitsu incredibly well.
So 2 variations that I think are very close to that, that are almost as good, not quite, the goblet squat.
Yep.
Right, which is, you'll see that at the beginner phases of all of our programs,
Yes,
and it's
sir.
just because it's kind of like a simplified version. You don't need a sandbag, but
No.
it's like you hold it, everything tightens up naturally because you're holding the weight, and then it gives you that little counterbalance because it's at the front. And then the Zercher squat, which a little bit more intricacy, maybe something for those who are a bit more into it,
bit more advanced perhaps.
but it still brings like a same thing I find when I'm doing Zercher squats. I don't have to think like I have to when I'm doing a back squat.
No, it's pretty natural. You either keep it tight and it stays on you, or you don't. It's gonna it's gonna pull away. So it is interesting that it takes out the thinking component. And it's just grip and lift.
Yeah,
and stay braced. So
can you talk to me? Tell me if I've digressed here. Can you talk to me about the knees and the foot positioning?
Okay,
I think this is one that's this is always argued in the strength circles and.
Yeah, and look, there's a bit of argument to say, depending on how your hips are built, like in your genetics, some people will need a bit of toes out because that's actually how their hip girdle sits. So that is, for them to try and sit with their feet parallel, it's not happening. In the same way, there's a lot of argument around, jump off this bench and land. The foot position you land in,
that's your squat.
That's your squat. But maybe not necessarily true in the sense that some people have a wider hip girdle, so they need like feet slightly wider, and that will enable them to get that bit deeper.
Yeah.
Like it is quite personal in that way.
Some people like with crazy long legs.
Yeah.
You put them into like a standard shoulder width kind of foot position, and they got so much leg to negotiate.
It's hard.
Like an Adam Childs.
Yeah.
You go, bro, let's go a bit wider so you got room now.
True. And then there's some people who squat with a very narrow stance so that their torso can compress against their thighs.
Yep.
And it makes them easier to be able to push straight up.
Ah, right.
It is one of those things you have to have a little bit of a play with. But this is what I would say. There's no one exact way, except the thing that we do know very well is that you should have your knees over your toes, like tracking over your toes. Your knees should move forward over your toes.
Yeah.
There was some big movement, I don't know how many years ago, where they're like, oh, your knees shouldn't go over your toes, it's bad for your knees.
Yeah.
But then they did a bunch of studies to show that
it puts pressure on the knee, which is the benefit.
Which is what
like your knee's getting stronger.
That's right.
Yeah.
You do need a degree of that.
Yeah, sure. If you're coming back from a knee surgery, maybe you're not doing them like that today.
Straight away.
Yeah.
But yeah, over time, the difference in the knee capsule, and I learned this from a physio, this guy called David Adams, smart guy. He does a lot of physio stuff with ice hockey players. But he was saying that the difference in the knee at 90 degrees, the pressure in the capsule versus arse to grass, it's only 5%. Like the difference of like the actual strain in the knee joint. So it's not such a bad idea to be taking it through a full range of motion if all your ligaments are intact.
No, yeah, and something I learned during my knee rehab is that the ACL is maximally tensioned at 90 degrees. That's why it's usually when athletes are stepping,
their knees,
little knee bend is maximum tension on the ACL. But when you go beyond that, it reduces.
Right. Okay, how interesting.
I know, right?
That's a good insight.
That whole tension. I think, what happened with squatting was that we got fixated on pushing the knees out.
Sure.
And then it was like, knees can never come in. Now, if your knees can't just be in the whole time,
sure,
we don't want that. That shows a bit of weakness. But yeah, I think that really fucked a lot of people up.
Sure. And the key thing here is to not get distracted. There's all these different details. Essentially, you do jiu-jitsu, you will need to squat. Whether you want to wrestle or you want to play guard or you want to pass guard or anything, you need a full range of motion and you need to be strong there. How are you going to get that in your life? It's pretty simple. Now, obviously,
what's our starting point?
Yeah, I believe that of all the different movements, you need a version of a squat. And if you struggle to squat because you have tight ankles or tight hips, it's actually not that hard to overcome. We just need to incorporate a bit of mobility and also squatting. Don't just avoid squatting. Don't just be like, I'm not ready. It's like people going, I'm not going to come to jiu-jitsu. I'll go get fit first. They never get fit and they never come to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So it is actually good for you to get a little bit of weight in your hands or a little bit of weight on your back and find out how your range of motion is and then start to do some activities to improve it. So I think a good place to start, the place I start nearly all beginners is let's look at your bodyweight squat. And then let's look at your goblet squat.
Yeah.
The kettlebell goblet squat is one of the best places for you to start.
Great.
So there it is, my friends. Now, it's one of those things that a lot of people are like, I heard it's bad for your back or, I heard it's bad for your knees and just all this stuff. You need to just get that out of the way. Whatever we can do to remove the barriers to entry and just get you getting better at this, jiu-jitsu will demand it of your body, whether you like it or not. So it's much better that you can practice it in a controlled environment and gradually improve it. So when the stress of jiu-jitsu comes, you don't break.
Absolutely.
That's what we're looking for. Now, my friends, we love you to bits and we love doing this show for you. But the thing that we really need is we need you to subscribe. So wherever you're listening to this or however you're watching this, we'd like you to hit subscribe, but then also give us a 5-star rating. That makes us more visible to other people like you who want to hear this. And then also, if you love an episode, please share it. We appreciate it. It means the world to us.
Get squatting. See you guys
sir.
next time.